Good evening. Welcome to the operating room. As you see, we are a little bit better organized than in the past. And I want to thank the technical people associated with the Labour Party who are also carrying this program. And this program will flow into their program at 9 o'clock. So we have an understanding that I would start at 7:30 tonight and flow right into their meeting. So I just wanted you to get that, to understand that. And I thank you for joining me. I know I've given late notice with regard to the start of tonight's program, but this is election time and people making quick adjustments and that sort of thing. Again, good evening and thank you very much for joining. We know you have other choices. There's so many other things you can do, although we on lockdown, but you choose to be here with us. So thank you very much. And last week, as per usual, and I'm very grateful for that, it was lively, it was informative. I want to thank you for your comments and your feedback and your guidance, both during the program and after. There's a lot going on and a lot of information and a lot of discussion, which is what we want to generate. Of course, a lot has also happened since last week, Tuesday, last 7 days. Parliament was dissolved last Tuesday. But we didn't know. We did not know. The country did not know. We are told that the Prime Minister visited the Governor General on Tuesday morning last week. And the Governor General dissolved the Parliament. The country didn't find out until the following evening, Wednesday. Excuse me. The Prime Minister thought it fit to inform the people of this country, that's you, not immediately, not an hour later, or 2 hours, or 5 hours, or 10 hours later after the dissolution. Instead, he chose more than 24 hours later to tell us. Now, I'm making the point here, and it needs to be understood. The dissolution of a parliament is one of the most important events in the administration of a democracy. The starting up of a parliament after an election, the dissolution of a parliament to end a term, an election, and all of the processes involved are the things that highlight and help to define whether you are a democracy or not. And matters of constitutional importance such as this have to be treated with the greatest urgency, not only in the execution of them, but also in the dissemination of the information about them to the general public. So there's very little information in a democracy that could be more important than and more urgent than the people knowing that their parliament is dissolved. But Dr. Harris clearly felt that he could and would tell the people of this country, that's you, in his good time. And that's exactly what he did. waiting for over 24 hours before informing you. Even some of the members of parliament were not aware of the dissolution. So they thought, and rightly so, that they were still members of parliament. Of course, the parliament can be recalled if there is a special urgent situation which requires it to be recalled. But once it is dissolved, basically, that's the end of that parliament. And there were parliamentarians who did not know. If some of you out there, and I like to be frank, if some of you out there have been so blind as to have seen, or to have not seen, sorry, clear signs of disrespect for public transparency, for democracy, for the rule of law, for the operation of our parliamentary rules and conventions, and for you, the people of the country, and your constitutional right to have information passed on to you and passed on to you in a quick and expeditious manner with the greatest urgency. If some of you have been so blind as not to have seen before clear evidence of the disrespect for transparency, then this event that happened last week should convince you of the lack of respect by Dr. Harris and his team for the Constitution, the conventions and rules of Parliament, and for you all, the people of the country. And if you miss this message that he is giving you loudly and clearly and in your face like a slap, then God bless this country. Because if people are going to get slapped in the face repeatedly and don't recognize it and don't put a stop to it, the face slapping will not only continue, it will degrade and deteriorate into even more degrading behavior. Leadership that is not controlled by the people is leadership that gets out of hand. And leadership that is out of hand can't lead to democracy. There can be no democracy. And the words of a leader, and this is important, guys, regardless of who you like or don't like, and who you back or don't back. You guys, we people have to think, and we have to think for ourselves. Do not be seduced and induced and distracted and manipulated and fooled. The words of a leader who declares his love and respect for the people, the ordinary man and woman, who proclaims his commitment to the cause of the ordinary man and woman. His words are betrayed and shown to be lies by his action, which doesn't show any love and respect. You could say anything with your mouth, but actions speak louder than words. This announcing of the dissolution of Parliament last Wednesday evening, of a dissolution that had taken place more than 24 hours before was an insult and a disrespect of the highest order. And this is not the first time that we've seen this in this administration. And it is because of incidents like this by the previous administration that this administration was given a chance to go into office and to try, not to try, but to provide a better, higher standard of governance. The others were removed from office and put to pasture or put in the wilderness, if you will, of opposition, so that they could understand that they have to come better than that if they want to be a valid alternative. And this group coming into office on the wings of hope and expectation of better governance has betrayed that hope, as manifested in countless instances. The latest being, well, they had a few for the week, but that one of which I'm speaking right now, the dissolution of the parliament. You name me. And I'm talking about the dissolution because it's important. I bet you none of you out there could name me a country, any country, that prides itself as being a democracy or as an emerging democracy, where this has happened, where a governor or a head of state dissolves the parliament today and doesn't announce it to the country before 24 hours have passed. Name me one country that prides itself in being a democracy or an emerging democracy that has done that. That cannot happen in any country whose people demand that their leaders respect the Constitution and respect the rule of law and respect them. It cannot happen in a country whose people collectively have self-respect. And I'm making the point, if we do not show that we have self-respect, we will not be in a position to demand and expect respect. In other words, the exercise leading up to the 2015 election was an exercise in deception, placing hope in the hearts of thousands of people in St. Kitts-Nevis. A number of them disaffected Labour supporters, a number of them hopeful PAM and other supporters, and a number of them none of the above, but just Kittitians and divisions who wanted better governance. And the hope was betrayed because the governance is no better. And if you promise to be better and you are no better, it makes you less than equal to what you condemned. It makes you worse. They did the same thing with the motion of no confidence. The former administration kept the country waiting for over 700 days for a motion of no confidence. Wrong. What happened when they came last year? The opposition, which is the Labour Party, presented a motion of no confidence, and what happened? The Speaker of the House allowed a member who is a government minister to wind up a debate that was never given a chance to take place on the pretext that the rules are ambiguous. The rules are not ambiguous with regard to that. You cannot wind up a debate that has not been given a chance to take place. And whereas the former administration's act of blocking the motion of no confidence, going back those several years, was a terrible act and a disrespect, these here have matched it by doing the same thing, by blocking it while it was happening. And I could name several other instances where the promise to be better was betrayed by the action of being worse. Talk is cheap. Action speaks louder than words. So the Prime Minister's action in this case reveals that his lovely words of transparency and good governance and all of that nice stuff may have been taken to heart by a lot of you, but it never came from his heart. And others who were like-minded, who were just cooping to get into the driver's seat. For you, it was a matter of the heart. For him, it was a matter of the mouth, just words, telling you what you wanted to hear. I too was fooled. So you're not alone. And a lot of us were fooled. And as I said, we don't have perfect choices. We are not perfect, but we have to make a choice, either between a penitent sinner of the past who promises to be better, or an arrogant performer of the present who threatens to be worse. These words and promises, they motivated and moved a lot of you to remove the Labour administration and me and replace it with one with Dr. Harris as the leader. As you breathe a sigh of relief and inhale the fresh, energizing air of new hope. But look how quickly that fresh and fragrant air of hope began to turn and become stale and stink. What the Prime Minister did, and I'll wrap up this point on the dissolution in a second. What the Prime Minister did in waiting for over 24 hours before informing us that the Parliament had been dissolved is the most recent major act of disrespect and a revelation and exposure of himself, the person that he really is. And I'm not here being personal and engaging in any personal attack. But when we put ourselves forward for leadership of any organization, most critically so a country, our character must be scrutinized. And how we conduct ourselves while we were in office and while we're seeking new office or seeking a new mandate must be a point for the consideration of voters. You know, all from our years together in Labour, Dr. Harris and myself, I had a sense as to his selfishness, his vindictiveness, his thin skin, and of course his vaulting ambition. He always wanted to be Prime Minister, and that's not a crime. It was really only after Dr. Douglas fired him and he became leader of Team Unity that I got to see the inner depths of the man. I'll never forget the night he was fired. We were at his home. And he told Sam, you have to resign in solidarity with me. And Dr. Thelma Philip Brown told him, you can't tell Sam that. You don't know Sam's circumstances. And Sam turned to me and said, do I draft my resignation? It was all about Timothy for Timothy. Don't bother with Sam, throw Sam on the bus. And Sam is not the only person who's been thrown under the bus by Timothy and will not be the only person to be thrown between now and election day. A number of you will be thrown under the bus and you might find out too late. You could have loyalty to people blindly at the expense of your own dignity, at your choice, not me. Speaking about the last elections, and I told you, when at that time I started to see the inner depths and got insights from other people. I'm going to tell you something tonight, but I won't go in full detail because I want to go in full detail when other persons who can say the same thing as I are with me. And that will be soon, very soon. before the election, God willing. One day leading up to those last elections, Alexis Nisbet, his nephew, called me and told me he needed to see me urgently. I told him I was at my house, and he said he would come to my house immediately, which he did. I went outside to meet him, and so anxious was he to start talking to me that the conversation began, continued, and ended outside the house. We never came in and sat down and had a juice or some water or anything, as I recall it. When Alex first appeared in front of me that day, his face looked frightened and deeply troubled. I asked him what was up, and he started out by saying, Dwyer, suppose I tell you that the man who we are trying to make prime minister is 10 times worse than the man who we are trying to remove as prime minister. Would you believe me? I said, you mean the same man they call 10 man in one? They have somebody 10 times worse than him? He says, yes. Alex was frightened. I asked him, explain what you mean. And he did. And he went into some very bothersome detail. He said, look, I am a young family man. I'm raising, at the time he had 2 young children and a nice young wife, who also is being thrown under the bus in this politics thing. He said he was building, this is Alex, he's building his house, and he's a young family man. And he would use those reasons to justify and explain his desire to withdraw himself from the political arena and from the efforts to get Timothy elected and placed into the prime ministership, because he didn't want any problems, any embarrassment, anything to come upon him and his young family. And he came to me as a younger man, showing some confidence and trust in myself, an older man who he thought had clean hands and who could give him some guidance from my experience. And I was gratified that he would be able to feel that way and to express himself to me. And I respected that. I asked him, have you spoken to Sam about this? And he said, no, because I don't know if Sam is involved in anything, and if so, to what extent. I said, you can speak to Sam about anything like this, because Sam would never be involved in anything that you said, that you just said to me. And he went to Sam, and he went to Sam and Jean, Sam's wife. And after that, he spoke to me individually, one-on-one, and he spoke to me in the presence of Sam and Jean. In fact, he almost lived by them. He was, as you say, in the tail on a regular basis. He was possessed, preoccupied with this thing to get himself out of that situation. So we used to be by Sam and Jean discussing these things. And one thing led to a next, but the net effect of all of that is something caused him to put all of that into a deep, dark box and to ignore everything he had said to me by myself and said to me in the presence of Sam and Jean. And the election was won. He became what he has become. He has been doing very well for himself in a number of ways. And it seems to me that the very things that he complained about all of a sudden became okay. Or if matters were cleared up, they certainly were cleared up with him, but not with the rest of us. I just want to put that there as a prep, as an intro, as an appetizer for next week, when it is my hope that I'll have two guests in here who can carry that conversation to its completion, because it tells us about people. And as I said, it's only, well, I haven't said it tonight, but we all know it, it's only when wind blow that you see fall bottom. It is after Tim was fired and being the leader of Team Unity and having the leverage and the power of that lofty position that we saw him behaving in a certain way in that position, which was ominous. But it was late. The election was upon us. And people hoped, people tried to resolve matters and hoped and tried to see put in place a proper system of checks and balances, everybody on everybody else, under the umbrella of full observance of the Constitution and rule of law, so that we will indeed, in all of our imperfections, all of us, whether you're in government or not, whether you're a friend of government or not, would see our country led to a better place than where it had just come from, in terms of governance and the culture of governing, integrity in public life, freedom of information, procurement, professional civil servants, civil service, and so forth. None of that has happened. The election is in a matter of days. The boundary matter that went to the Privy Council days before the last election is still yet to be resolved. And it's probably not going to be resolved for this election. And there's a reason for it. Because those who brought the matter were in opposition at the time. They were afraid of the boundaries that were proposed then. The process by which those boundaries were pushed was found, and rightly so, to be unconstitutional, found so by the Privy Council. But there were boundaries that more accurately reflected the population distributions in the country. Certainly more equitable boundaries and more in accordance with the Constitution than the old 1989 boundaries, which it seems will be the boundaries we use. Again, politicians using the Constitution, using the resources of the country, using every resource they can use for their own personal or political furtherance, not for the best interest of the country and democracy. And we've seen too many examples of this in a single term of this administration under Dr. Timothy Harris. I leave that there for now. Let me touch something a little personal, but I'm not going to dwell on it. Last week on his program, Douglas Watley, who has a program, as we all know, on KISS FM on a Wednesday night from 8 to 10, Dougie told his audience that Patches Liebert had told him some time ago why he, Patches, had become upset with me and had fallen out with me, or words to that effect. What Dougie said was that Patches had told him that he had brought some work to me to do on behalf of his son, the younger son, who a few years ago, sadly, was murdered. May God rest his soul. And according to Dougie Watley, Patches said that rather than doing the work for free as a friend of Patches, I decided I will charge him a fee. Nothing tall go so. I will tell you all what happened, but I don't want to dwell in these personal things, just to respond, and it gives you an insight again into people, because they come up with all kind of fancy Nancy stories to try to discredit me and other people. The prime objective being that their skins are thin, as is the case with all bullies. They cannot stand up to the scrutiny of scientific and steady analysis. And I want to distract you from what's really going on. Patches came to me to witness a signature on a document purportedly signed by his son, who at the time was outside of the country. And I had a difficulty with it, because if I put my signature and my seal on a document purportedly signed by somebody, but that somebody is not present, then I could not only be putting myself in trouble and damaging my own integrity and reputation, but I could be breaking the law. And I said that was a problem for me. I don't know if that is the incident to which he's referring, but I don't recall any incident in which I did work for him and charge him, and he got upset for it. But I changed his name to Patches. I did the deal poll for him. I didn't charge him. But he wants people to believe things when he goes public on his radio program, but he tells people things in private that are contrary to that. Well, that's the story. If that is the reason that he is upset with me, then now you all know the real reason. Not that it matters to me. I don't matter to him. He matters to me. He's a child of God. I happen not to be supportive of him. I happen to have been supportive of him in his efforts to get reelected. And nearly everything he has done since he got elected has given me good and repeating reason not to vote for him again. And when Dougie said what he said on the radio last week, I had to shake my head in disbelief. I said, no man, this is gone beyond ridiculous now. This is just stupidness. And now they came out with this thing on the media, on the social media, again trying to disparage me and discredit me and hold me into ridicule. The day will come when all of the facts on the Bastia second cruise spear are revealed to the public. And the day will come not while these people are in office. And when that day comes, whether I am above the land or below it, you all will get the truth. I'm not going to waste your time to allow Patches to dictate the narrative and take up all of this time discussing foolishness. And when you all get all of the facts, and I have files upon files, I went through them over the weekend. I brought them home just to refresh myself on them. And if I started to talk about them, then you all will know what is what. But that's not for now. You all have other things to worry about, like jobs and feeding your families and your children overseas studying, and the real issues. And that fear is an issue too, because we need to know things about it. How much are the cost overruns? How are you paying TDC and National Bank and those other entities, Social Security? We're going to go to that tonight too. Now, all of this love you have for these people, the poor people, you all love them. We have about 170 students between America and Cuba, and maybe the USVI. Many of them, maybe most of them, are out there wanting to come back. Some not. Some of them prefer to stay here, but are catching their tails. Those who want to come back are also catching their tails. The government says yesterday or today, they're not paying to bring home any students. We're going to talk about that. Already, you know, students at the UVI in St. Thomas have lost part of their scholarship money to the bank here, to the government here. And that has caused a lot of them to be unable to meet their financial obligations, including to the university, which means they cannot get their transcripts, which means they can't graduate and go on to graduate school. These are people in whom we are invested so that they will come back home with their skills and build our country. This is the future of St. Kitts that we're talking about. Cutting the scholarship money for them, not giving any reason. Imagine you are a parent tonight. You're in Cayon or in Sadlers or wherever. You have a child in Cuba studying medicine, a daughter in the States doing accounting or whatever. Your child. These young people need to be helped by the government. Why can't the government spend a couple of $100,000? Help them out with a little stipend, those who want to stay there. And those who want to come back, bring them back. That's our people, that's our young people, that's our future. If you abandon them now, in their time of greatest need, how can you claim to love the people of this country? And the future, the brain power that will direct and manage and administer this country and its destiny and protect its patrimony, you're treating with such abject cruelty. In the manifesto of the same Team Unity, on page 28, let me see if I find it here quickly for you guys. On page 28, they say they will establish a fund that will guarantee every person who qualifies assistance to obtaining university and tertiary education. An education guarantee fund to underwrite university costs for young people who lack the collateral for student loans. But you cut the assistance, the scholarships to your students in the UVI, and they don't know why, and they don't know where to go, and they're beating their heads against the wall. And those in the States and those in Cuba are suffering and struggling. They can't meet their rents. They can't meet their utility payments. I'm not saying you give them 5,000 US dollars a month, but help them with something. Those who are needy, you could do a means test. The same way you are trying to bring in people from outside and squeeze them through and get them through the fake marriages and get them certificates of citizenship and passports and get them registered. You want me to tell you all a joke? The same way you all could do that. In fact, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be focusing on your people, not your votes. You're all focusing on winning an election, not on the people winning their future. in the face of this unmeasured, because you can't measure it yet, challenge that we face in the COVID virus. A lady was in Western Union today. She told me, a man in there speaking Spanish could hardly find a word of English. He came here in late March. I don't know if he came in on the last flight, or if he come in after the flight, or if he lied and he come in some other how. Because as secure as they said the borders are, too many strange faces are appearing on our land. And too much talk about passports going out and people coming in on them, and people coming in and getting this and that through this barber shop or that bar or whatever. The man doing a transaction, he just reached St. Kitts. Probably on a fake marriage too. And one of the people who has been involved in these fake marriages, in the racket, came to me today and told me a lot about how it has been done. The woman asked him, "What's your address?" He said in his heavy accent, he live on a street there by the square, but he don't know the name of the street. She tell him, "I can't help you. You don't know your address?" That's where we reach. We're looking for people who could help us win so we could stay in power, and don't pass the part of the integrity in public life where we have to file our declarations of personal worth. Because we want to do what we can do. But them young students out there in America and Canada and England and Taiwan and Cuba and St. Thomas and elsewhere, Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, whatever happened to them happened to them. As they said today, they're not bringing home students. Nationals who want to return can do so on charter flights. They will be sequestered in quarantine, and half the cost of the quarantine, if it's a government quarantine, would have to be paid for by their families. We understand that the government is thinking of, or maybe planning, to have some of their benefactors fly in people, put them in the 14-day quarantine, and then bring them out to let them come and vote. Or they're going to break down the health system in order to stay in power. I hope that story isn't true, because that would be as cruel and callous as anybody could be, and as exposing and revealing of a selfishness that this country has never seen before. The man in Western Union can't even talk English. He don't know the name of the street he live on. What he doing in India? He come from Santo Domingo. He's sending money home already, and he just reach. Because nobody's sending money from Santo Domingo to St. Kitts. And if he came here in March, was he put in quarantine? So the students, all you out there and all your own. I understand the division, the Nevis Island Administration is making arrangements for their students. I'm not getting into that. Last week when I started to talk about Nevis, people thought I was taking sides. I believe Brantley has done well as a Minister of Foreign Affairs. But I also said last week that both parties should feature in the federal equation. Both parties. And I said both parties have talent to bring to the table, as do all of the parties in St. Kitts. And Nevis, our problem is that we don't think unity, we talk it. We talk unity, but live division. We talk addition, but we live division. If they're bringing in people here and going to test the health system and expose this country to a real serious outbreak of this virus, or anything as egregious as that, whoever is trying that will find in me an opponent who, even at the age of 72, is willing to get into any kind of fight to the death, because that ain't gonna happen. If one side can bring in, the other side can bring in, and don't say no government bringing in, because government never brings in people. It's not out of taxpayer dollars. It's benefactors who give you money to bring in people. They don't give you the money. Well, unless some politicians want the money. They organize with the plane. You can't steal a march on the opposition. What is good for Peter must be good for Paul. And there will be no election with that kind of thing happening, and it remain like that. It will not happen in this country. Something will have to happen. Something will have to give. I am willing to die for this. I am a hero, but I'm willing to die for this. And if you don't care about our young students, you can't care about the country. And if you don't care about the country, you ain't supposed to be leading it. You're not supposed to be elected, and you have no moral license to seek election or re-election. Go away. Go your way. Citizenship certificates to people with fake marriages. Nonsense. Nonsense. And I told you about the felony money transfer place today. Just give me a second here. I just checking something here. Yeah, the man who came to me today and told me about this thing with the fake marriages and the certificates of citizenship and then the voting and so. This is somebody who is, we all have our epiphanies, and sometimes you go to somebody to kind of talk what you know to get it off your chest. I will never reveal his identity. But the point I want to make is about talking about caring for people while your actions indicate unequivocally, without the shadow, beyond the shadow of a doubt, you're talking about caring of the people for the people, but you're acting as if you care for yourself. Look at Scasper. When the government changed, Scasper had about 240 employees. And I'm making this point because a mother of a student in Cuba called me last night and told me, she said, Mr. Astafan, I need to hear from the politicians what plans they have to secure jobs, to provide jobs. People are struggling and suffering, and the struggling and suffering will get worse before it gets better. More and more people will be out of jobs. I want to hear what the politicians have to offer about that. Another one told me again last night, because people are calling, and especially now. She said all she's hearing from the government, on the government side, in these so-called town halls that they're having, which you and I are paying for, is abusing. And some proud record they said they're standing on when they've done no successfully completed projects. The Wellington Road apartments finished? If not, why not? The old road betting, what happened to that? How much overruns they've had with that? What about the government printery and Church Street? Was that project passed through Public Works for procurement purposes? Who are the people who provide in procurement for that contract? You all would like to know? You should ask. How much do they owe the contractor? Why is it they run out of materials? Why is it that project has taken so long? That small project on Church Street. Why they haven't been able to attract one major development? Why have so many manufacturing jobs been lost? And you know what they promised? They promised to provide 2,000 jobs in their first term. 2,000 jobs in their first term. Where is it? How many jobs did they create? The net situation insofar as jobs are concerned is a negative, it's not a positive. 2,000 jobs during the first 5 years. Partner in the manufacturing sector alone to add 150 new jobs by the end of 2015 and another 500 by 2020. Jobs in manufacturing have dwindled even before all of this COVID thing. So back to the port. They had about 240 people working there when the government changed. The figure is about 360 today. It has increased by 50% in 5 years. The mother who called me last night and asked about what's going to happen when more and more people lose their work. It is the failure of this government to create jobs in the private sector, to stimulate jobs in the private sector. And it is because of politics why a place like the port would have to increase its worker complement by such a large number of persons. It's because of their failure to produce the jobs, stimulate the jobs in the private sector. And you know what is going to happen after the election? They're not telling you all this, but I am telling you this. The economy, they're trying to reopen it, which is good. We all support that. We want people working. But these state-owned corporations, just like the private sector, after the election, and they're not telling you this now, and if you ask them before the election, you know, they'll tell you there is no intention. But I am telling you, they are contemplating after the election to send home a lot of people, not only from the port, but from other public sector places of work. They cannot carry 360 people in these conditions. The port revenue since COVID-19 has fallen by 60%. 60%. They have to pay to maintain their facilities. They have to pay staff. They have to pay their overheads. They have to pay for the new pier, which is about 140, 150 million. And they won't tell us what extras and what other costs there are. They're not telling us. And the only way we're going to find out is if people take them to court, if they win, or if they lose. And people are afraid to go to court because the first thing they have to do is find money to retain a lawyer. And people in power know that because people, the ordinary man, doesn't have the means to fight a government in court. Revenue. But the bills are higher than they were 6 months ago. So what's the first thing they have to do? Not lay off people? They went and borrowed money from Social Security, I'm told, $10 million. And talking about Social Security, I want to advise the lady, process the checks through the proper channels. Don't go by no side door, but process checks for with Social Security. Deal with Social Security straight. Social Security is a straight organization. That's our organization. The private sector, some of them have taken cuts. TDC, for example, the top executives have taken a 15% cut. The middle management a 10% cut. The wage earners have been reduced to hourly workers. So they get the worst licks because their salary is the smallest and not guaranteed even a steady weekly paycheck or a monthly paycheck like the middle managers and the upper level managers. I would have thought that it's they who should feel the least pinch of all, and those who are making the most feel the biggest pinch. But at least they have taken a step in TDC. Now the country was open on Friday, talking about love of the small people. What it is that could have or would have happened in St. Kitts on Saturday to prevent Timothy Harris from opening up St. Kitts on Saturday under restricted conditions like they've done the day before. You know what closing it down did? It prevented hourly workers in TDC and other companies like that from making a few dollars for that day to feed their families. You can't show me any public health risk or any national security risk that would have occurred on this Saturday under curfew and restrictive conditions to justify closing down the country on a Saturday, that last Saturday, but leaving it open the day before. You talk about you care about poor people. And this is one of the motives that I have seen. I could be wrong. In this lockdown, in the state of emergency, they wanted to lock up the country for a year so they could do what they have to do under the umbrella of a state of emergency. Maybe included having people brought in here to vote for them and not for the opposition. Saturday, none of them wage earners in TDC make any money, as far as I'm aware. And it's not TDC's fault. It's not TDC who closed down the country. You're using a state of emergency to oppress people. And then you went down to 6 months. For what? The only other country in the world that had an outrageous state of emergency like that is Botswana in Africa. No other country. 6 months for what? So you could have your election in a state of emergency. A state of emergency takes away people's rights and puts more power in the hands of the government, the decision makers, and the security forces. You don't extend those things 1 minute longer than they need to be because they take away people's rights and liberties. And sooner or later, the longer they last, they take away your dignities and your dignity and your confidence. Timothy Harris and his team seem to want to batter the people into submission with these extra lockdown days. I haven't heard any justification for having closed down the country on Saturday. None at all. Just give me 1 minute here, please. Somebody just tells me that the Prime Minister said that they provided 3,000 homes. Where them homes be? Maybe 300. Maybe 300, but not 3,000. Somebody's telling me he can't get me on Facebook. Go to the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party Facebook page, and I'm there on their site. I'm also on YouTube. And good night, my brother. Slim man. Yes, Hobson, I tell you, do I ask the fan or the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party? Let me see who else here to answer. How many homes have they built? How many contractors they owe? How many contracts were granted without going through the proper procurement process? How many people get work as contractors and middlemen who don't know the first thing about contracting? What about them small people who can't eke out a living? And let me tell you all, the next 3 to 6 to 9 months are going to be likely, I hope I'm wrong, tougher than the past 3 months. We also on Kiss FM, I'm told. So thank you. Thank you, Kiss FM, for putting us there. Now we talk about, and I could give you a number of other examples where the state of emergency is being used as a club on the people. When you put power in people's hands, you measure a man's character by the way he handles his power. Whether he's a conductor on a bus, a street cleaner, a lawyer, a prime minister, or whatever. And likewise for females, because females abuse power as well. This is not strictly for males. Got a meeting in Newtown yesterday. When you have closed down the meeting over by Marriott, which they said they're going to use as one of their locations to put people. Lockdown there, people out there. A meeting in Newtown Community Center yesterday. About 30 people, maybe 2 wearing masks. Just to call a number. No social distancing. So the rules are for us, but not for those who are supposed to lead us. Leading by example is at the very cornerstone of leading. Leadership is about leading by example, not do as I say, not as I do. Because if you have that mentality, you'll abuse your leadership and you'll abuse the national security agencies in the country. Now I want to talk about this returning officer story. There's so many things I can talk about. You hear? I don't know about this Bastia High School thing, brother, because, and I'm glad no Bastia High School bill on the thing. That was one of the big items too, Bastia High School. And God knows why no Bastia High School bill over there. And I hope none is ever built there. Let them go back to the old site. Dig it up, sanitize it, and build a beautiful campus up there. Modern, but in the culture and the architectural heritage of the country. Let's stop building all these concrete jungles in the country. If you put in concrete, it's strong, but put a facade to give it the cultural flavor of our heritage and our patrimony. That is the thing you need to excite our people about, and other things. The returning officers. You all heard about that story. The supervisor of election, Mr. Elvin Bailey, has for some time been putting people through training and preparation for different positions to have the manpower resources to conduct an election efficiently. And the people who were training, he determined X amount of them to be fit and proper persons. They absorbed the information, they showed the integrity and everything, and so on and so on. And he recommended them, that were his choices, to be returning officers. The list apparently and allegedly reached the Prime Minister, who didn't like any of those on the list for St. Kitts. There were 3 apparently for Nevis, or however many, and those for Nevis apparently were left intact. But every single name that the supervisor of election recommended, from his direct contact with these people over an extended period of time of training and orientation and observation, Every name he changed, he had changed. And I'm not questioning the integrity of the persons whose names are now being put forward. I am not. But why would they interfere in that? Does he want people who he thinks will be easier for him to work with and his candidates? Or does he want people who are going to do the job? And while the Governor General has the final say, and he will act with the advice of the Prime Minister, you just don't overrule a supervisor of elections like that. Some people think the supervisor of elections should resign in protest. And maybe there's some merit in that argument. But maybe there's also some merit in the counter argument that he should steady up and fight to make sure that no atrocities are committed against the process of the election. Because they're already saying when you're in power, you ain't supposed to lose a government. Win at all costs. Stay in there at all costs. And I am telling you all, the people of this country, if you all want to find out, and I used to say that the last election, if you want to find out what happened in the past, don't elect those who are there now, because they ain't going to tell you. Elect some other people. And the country is edging forward to the point where we'll have a critical mass of citizens who will insist and do what they have to do to make sure that government is accountable and transparent. And we're almost there. You do yourselves no favor in the process of opening up the accountability side by electing or re-electing people who are unlikely to deliver the information which you have a constitutional right to have. You all remember 5 years ago what they were saying on the platform? Douglas do that do this, Mary do this, John do that. We're going to investigate everything. They investigated the electoral office. What did you get? They investigated SIDF. Where is the Ernst & Young report? They said Douglas going jail. They said this going that. They said that going that. What did they do? They did not a damn thing. Maybe they have no intention of doing anything other than to excite you and to incite you and to fool you. Maybe that was the intention. Because they certainly excited you. They excited me. They incited me. And they fooled me. But not one formal revelation of anything. An election gonna come now, and they're gonna go and read some files and try to distract you. What they haven't done up to now, do not take anything from them now as gospel. Because while they're waiting now for you to vote for them, if people have done wrong in the public sector, they must be made accountable for it. Don't just come at an election at the last minute and say, remember we tell all you what they do? CT in a file now. So you're going to get elected and you fool off the people again and you win. And nothing gets done to right that injustice that was perpetrated against the people, which you accuse others of doing. While you're doing worse. Doing worse. Now, people want to know things and people have a right to know things. We have a right to information. The people of the country need to know, for example, what is the cost of the taxiway at Robert Bratcher Airport and why it ain't finished yet? By the estimate of people in the profession, that project, that runway taxiway is 4,000 feet long by about 80 feet wide, by about 1.5 feet thick, and would use at that level of concentration because it's a taxiway for heavy equipment falling from the air. About 180,000 bags of cement at about $20 to $23 a bag. Maybe $3.5 to $4 million worth of cement. Who's providing that cement? Who's providing the cement for all them sidewalks that they're building? Anywhere they could find, they build a sidewalk. They don't care how much the road narrow. For the project that they've built, why is the ferry terminal, the bus stand down there, not finished? What are the costs and the cost overruns? What are the costs of the roads that they're boasting about as if government's not supposed to fix roads at all times? What have these guys done in terms of additions to the economy? Additions in the private sector, stimulating that new direct foreign investment, foreign direct investment to add new jobs and business opportunities for Kittitians and divisions. Name one. Don't go around and boast about surpluses. You have surpluses and you can't help the students away. Well, I hope the students, mothers and fathers, and brothers and sisters, and cousins, and friend and boyfriend and girlfriend here understand that you have time to help people with fake marriages, get citizenship, but you don't have time for your own people with the surpluses you say you had. And Douglas said he left $900 million. And people didn't believe him then. But a lot of people believe him now. And people close to you all at high levels said that you all blew that early. You blew that early. I am not calling for any commission of inquiry. I'm calling for the people to have inquiring minds and to go through this election thinking, thoughtful, analytical, unbiased, unemotional, and make a surgical decision. You don't have perfect choices. You either choose a group that was there and made mistakes and has confessed and is trying to regroup, and the young people in the Labour Party, the young men in the Labour Party, not just the candidates, but the people in the Labour Party, as is Dr. Douglas, I am convinced, are committed to transitioning to new leadership. Some people said he's promised this all the time. Well, all the time has gone, but this is now. That choice, because I also believe that Douglas and them are better capable to handle the country in this crisis or any other crisis and in bringing us through. Although I used to say he was the worst prime minister ever. But that was until this one came. Joe Louis might have been the best heavyweight champion ever. Then Muhammad Ali came. I might have been the worst draft player in St. Kitts ever until somebody come and show me he was worse than me. And I want, because I'm going to wind up shortly, I want to speak about the candidates. In number one, the Labour Party has Jeffrey Hanley, record of teaching, community service, youth parliament, a whole heap of other things. They have a lot of bad things to say about him with regard to his connections with the PEP program, or whatever you call it. And again, 5 years have passed, not one prosecution, but elections now, and like they've done in a document which I said I signed, an agreement, publish the whole damn thing. Publish everything. Let the people see and let the people know that you are cherry picking and trying to fool them. What you're going to bring on Jeffrey Hanley now that you shouldn't have brought before? Why should people believe you now? What is so desperate now? Like you have no other argument to make. For 5 years, you ain't released nothing. Election time come, you want to drop a bomb. And then what? And you forget about it after the election again. We ain't want that. We want things to be done on an ongoing basis. And part of ongoing governance is ongoing analysis and investigation and dissemination to the public. The public has to know. Running against Patty's Liebald, who can't finish projects, the project's going overboard. He has shown what he does at the airport. He's arrogant. He's traveled to the tune of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars at the expense of the port. And if he go in 1 hour flight from Berlin to London, it's first class. And you can't put him in a $300 night hotel. He will move himself out and go to a $500 night hotel on your dime. You saw him before the election and you've seen him after. You have a choice. I am voting for Hanley. I can't vote for Patches. In number 2, and this is not here, I'm not here to endorse the Labour Party, you know. But last election, I told you all that I was not voting for the Labour candidate. And now I'm telling you, I'm not voting for Patches. And I'm looking at the choices. In number 2, you have Marcella, who in my view has matured and grown over the years, especially the last 2 years. And you have a young man, Jonel, running against her. I happen to like Jonel personally. But I believe Jonel has a problem. And the problem is this court case. And I'm not accusing Jonel of anything. But if there's a certain standard of behavior at the bar, and it is to determine how that goes, the substantive matter and whatever. Suppose he gets elected and he's in there, and then something happens at the court or through the disciplinary process to expose certain untoward things, some of which have already been revealed in the judgment. Then what? Is the standard to be a member of parliament and a minister lower than the standard to be a lawyer practicing before the court, when the parliament is the highest court in the land? And so all this will wait until after the election. Then something happened after the election, and what we have, embarrassment. I'm not telling Jonel not to run, but I believe that voters will, and I'm trying to be objective here, I believe voters will have a look at that and have a serious look, as they will in number 4 with Rensford running for Labour against Grant, who apparently seems to be the favorite. But this is something that voters have to consider, because it could have serious implications and repercussions for not just the constituency, but for the country. Up in number 3, I think they're trying Akila Byron Nisbet, who I'm very fond of. I've known her since she was a young girl. I know her family. They're lovely people. I think Akila is being used as a guinea pig, and she's being thrown under the bus. And she's being accompanied by people who are not good for her and will not help her in terms of getting votes. I mentioned number 4. Number 5, again, Sean, in my opinion, has not projected the image of sufficient seriousness and maturity as the leader of PAM in number 5 or nationally. And he's running against a young fellow who's a serious, charismatic, well-grounded fellow, Kenny Douglas. In 7, well, I think number 6 speaks for itself. In number 7, if the PAM people remember the past and reflect on certain things, they might say, well, let me tell you, no. Once but not twice. And that could be a closer race than people think. And in number 8, I believe I like Eugene Hamilton. I think he's a nice guy. But I believe Eugene was more effective in opposition than he is in government. And he's running against a fellow who is very, very dynamic and hardworking. He's been working the constituency. And as I said, whoever wins should try to give the two Nevis parties a chance to have a say in the country, in the general running of the country. However that can be structured. It doesn't have to be a parliamentary or ministerial involvement, but some kind of involvement. But we have problems. And we have to look at these problems objectively. I have made up my mind. I have observed these guys. And I do not like the way the country is being led. This talk about surplus and good fiscal governance and things like that. We know how accounts could be structured and made to look good. Read the reports of the Director of Audit. That is where the real action is. Read the reports of the Director of Audit. In the country so well, and the hospital is in such a mess. You're governing the country so well, and so many other things are in such a mess. You have all these surpluses, and you can't find money to put an MRI machine in the public sector. You promised before the election to put a national health insurance plan in place, and 5 years and you can't get it done. What have they done to add to the economy and social fabric of the country? Crime is down, dangerous crime, murders are down, and there's no doubting that. And social measures and social and economic causation lie at the very heart and soul of antisocial behavior. But the young men who are being engaged also need to provide their quid pro quo and reach a point where they can be self-sufficient. But they must be given every opportunity, because I support assisting them, and it should have been done before. But remember, the initiative came from them. They decided that enough was enough among themselves. And how do I know that? They came to speak to me twice in the very early days of this process. So I know what's going on the ground. But these guys have not done enough, in my opinion, the present administration, to justify a second term. They have not. As a group, as I said, there's some of them I really like and think have a lot of potential, and some of them are square pegs in round holes. A lot of arrogance, a lot of self-indulgence, a lot of greed, and in need of some serious examination. And that will not happen if they are returned to office. So I want to tell you all tonight, as I wind up, this election is going to be the most serious election we've had in modern times. It is also going to be unique because it will be conducted in a manner never before conducted. But that provides you with a better opportunity and a better environment to be thoughtful in your analysis and to be more enlightened in your decision making. So when you go and put your X and dip your finger, you're making a rational decision. As the mother of the student in Cuba asked me, what is going to happen to people 4, 6, 5 months from now. People going to be on hourly work. Some people will be without work. What are all those taxi drivers and busmen going to do? What are the plans? And as I listen to the labor meetings, I don't listen to all or all night. I hear them talking about plans. As I listen to these guys, they say what they have done, and really that is more inflated stuff than exact, and a lot of abusing and talking about how people grudge and want this and want that and so on. And then going back. It's not a matter of going back. You could go forward with people who you were with before and things didn't go right. And everybody refocus and recalibrate. And you go forward with those who you were there with before. Relationships can be mended. The compass can be recalibrated. But these guys have shown, and too many of them, arrogance, contempt, and the level of corruption across the board in the public sector, to me, from what I have observed, is unmatched. And corruption hurts the people, especially the small man, because any lick shear, the small man get it first, and the small man get it worse. I thank you all for listening. I thank you for watching. I thank the Labour Party for linking up with me tonight. I thank Lenny Lestrade, the technical man. I thank Kiss FM. I thank all of you. And I'll give you my feedback after the program. Have a wonderful night and see you next week, Tuesday, God Spear Live. That's it.